All right, here we are live. Welcome to Curiosity Public. I'm Dutch, here solo tonight. Hopefully this is sounding and looking all right. Everything looks okay on my end. Anybody that's in the chat can maybe drop a comment. Let me know if you can hear this and see this and that it looks okay. So hopefully it's all good. All right. See the Bourbon Wrench. What is up, man? Thank you for stopping in. Great. There's Ernie. Good, good. Awesome, guys. Cool. Well, we got some fun stuff planned here for a special Cinco de Mayo. Bourbon Wrench is... You're going to get me started quoting Kung Pao, and it's going to basically completely derail the stream here. So, all right, guys. Cool. Lots of people pinging in here now. Looks like things are sounding good and clear. Awesome. So I hope everybody, first of all, had a good May the 4th, which is an important day as well, because, you know, you got to represent some love for Star Wars. Okay, Ross says, my hair needs to be combed. Yeah, it's a mess. Sorry. But yeah, so Cinco de Mayo today, you know, we don't usually do any streaming stuff on a Wednesday. I know Mash and Drum always got his stuff going, so we don't want to necessarily step on that, but I had to do something for Cinco de Mayo here. You know, it's actually an interesting holiday that pretty much started in California, believe it or not, in the late 1800s, in response to you know the victory that the Mexicans fought over the French in the Battle of Puebla. And you know, it started out, there were people in a mining town from Mexico, and they heard about this and they started celebrating, and it became a thing and kind of slowly spread from there. There was kind of a push in the 1940s, and then when beer companies kind of got a hold of the idea of as a marketing ploy, it really kind of blew up. So it's, I don't know, maybe a little bit analogous to the way St. Patrick's Day is a big kind of party day in the US, but it's not really that much of a special day, or at least the same kind of celebrations aren't really had in Ireland. So, all right, so let me go over quickly what I got here that I'm going to be cracking into. Now in a little bit, I'm going to crack into this bad boy, which is the new Calumet 15, if it'll focus, there we go. Look at that, 105 proof, 15 years old. This is the follow-up release to the Calumet 14, which came out last year. We got a review of that, you guys can check that out. And it's kind of similar in stats. You know, it's a batch of 19 bottles, it's 1 year older. On the website, they do list the mash bill, and it is the same mash bill, which people have identified as being from Barton. So I'll be cracking into that, giving some first impressions on it. I am actually pretty interested to see how it is, because you got a, you know, 1 year older, and I think a bump up in proof. Yeah, the 14 is 96.2 proof, 15, as I said, 105. So, all right, we're gonna get to that a little bit later. We're gonna do the tequila first, since, you know, we got to celebrate both some Mexican stuff and some American stuff today. So we'll do a little bit of both. Let me check the chat here real quick. All right. Ernie's in here. Thanks, Ernie, for being a member. Anuj, what's up? James Morgan in the house. Devin Patel. All right, cool. Couple of reminders here also, guys. I always forget to do this kind of ministerial stuff, but we do have t-shirts. I put the banner up down there. It should be in the description as well. The t-shirt shop is up and running. Great way to support the channel if you want to do it. We've got some new designs. I don't think they're in there yet. I know Dolan's working on some. And we're also working on some that are going to be exclusive for giveaways in future lives that are pretty cool. So keep your eyes out for that. I think we might have that in next week or the week after. So t-shirts, remember we got our membership program here on YouTube, another great way to support the channel. We got some members in chat already. Fantastic way to support the channel, and you get special exclusive content, videos just for members. And you also get early access to the videos, provided I get them edited in time. So far, I've usually been about 24 hours ahead of time with them. So I can do a little better, I know, I'll try. If you're watching the replay of this and you're not already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. Simply the best way to help the channel out. Hit the like button. If you're watching it live, hit the likes. If you're watching the replay, hit the likes. Definitely helps us out as well. All right, so you don't have any limes and salt? No, no. We're going to be sipping on this tequila, guys, because this is some good stuff. All right, so let me go over the tequilas that I'm going to be drinking tonight, cracking into. So these are fresh cracks. That's what we like to do with our lives here, is crack into unopened bottles that we haven't cracked into yet. And the first one is, they're actually both from a company called ArteNOM, Tequila ArteNOM. The first one is Selection 1579, which refers to the NOM. So it's called ArteNOM because essentially what this company does is it's similar to the way there's independent bottlers for Scotch. There are bottlers that will kind of go to a distillery and pick out a series of casks or something like that, put them together in a blend, maybe do a single cask release. I think Signatory does this, Joseph Murray, is that what it is? I don't know. There's the one for Scotch as well. And they put them out under their brand, and they'll usually reference which distillery it is from. Very similar concept here with Tequila ArteNOM. They go to specific distilleries. In this case, every distillery for tequila has what's called an NOM number. And let's see, I got a bottle here, G4. And you can see down there on the bottom, it says NOM 1579, which happens to be the same distillery that Tequila ArteNOM sourced this tequila from. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. The next one I'm going to be getting to a little bit later is another one from Tequila ArteNOM. It's their Añejo, which is from distillery 1146, which happens to be the distillery that makes the famed Tears of Llorona, which we are huge fans of here. Still our highest scoring spirit ever. Still can't believe that, by the way. So a couple of really cool sipping tequilas here that I'm going to get to. I've also got another bourbon that I will crack into, probably in between, which is a brand new Four Roses barrel strength. This is a OBSK coming at you at 55% alcohol. I just picked this up today because I'm little by little accumulating all of the 10 recipes to try to do maybe a big drink through of them. I don't know. We haven't quite decided what we're going to do with it, but I've got a couple more still to get, so it might be a little while before we finally get that going. All right, so I'm going to check into the chat here real quick. All right, Bourbon Wrench says, I don't have any dang tequila mix. All you need is, yeah, there you go. Dev says, you don't have limes and salt. You know, the best margarita is a Tommy's margarita, which is simple syrup or agave nectar. I don't think it matters which one you use. Purists will say you got to use agave nectar, but I actually think that simple syrup might be better. So simple syrup, which is just 1-to-1 sugar and water, right? You mix it until it's a syrup. You know, you got to heat the water, obviously. Mix basically about 1/2 part of that to 1 part tequila and 1 part lime juice, freshly squeezed lime juice, and you've got fantastic margarita over ice there. Okay, let's see. Nick P is here. Awesome. Another one of our members. Thanks for supporting the channel. Ray, another member. Again, thank you for supporting the channel. Ross likes the Four Roses. Yeah, those are fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Four Roses, and those barrel strengths are just fantastic. Okay, Anuj has a great question here. Let me pop this up. I keep forgetting I can put these up here. What sipping tequila would you recommend for a beginner? Not the tiers. I don't want to break the bank, which totally understandable. So if you're just looking to get into it, check out our drink through we did of Tapatio. Tapatio's a well-priced, relatively inexpensive brand. I think that's a pretty good one to consider. You can also try Arete, which I don't think I have a bottle of here. Arete is also relatively inexpensive and very well made, very, very clean taste to that one. If you want to bump a little bit in price, the G4 I showed a little bit earlier is a good one. Fortaleza, which is actually what I kind of just was sipping on to set my palate. This is absolutely fantastic. Price on these has gone up a lot over the last few years, so it's not nearly as expensive as tiers. And again, keep in mind, you're going to have a big difference between a Blanco, an unaged one, and an Añejo, or even an extra Añejo. So where you start in that spectrum is also going to kind of affect it. But I would recommend, Dylan's perspective is always go for an Añejo and a Blanco and see which side of that you like better, and that might be, a good way to start. Also, there's a lot of people that love halfway in between with a Reposado, so hopefully that is helpful. All right, first super chat of the night here from Leo. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, Leo. Always hated tequila, I thought. Then you did your tiers review, convinced me to grab a bottle. Wow, additive-free tequilas are bombing. Have found G4, El Tesoro, and Pasote so far. Love the channel. Awesome, Leo. Glad you found something you like. That's really what we're into here, which is getting people to maybe try different flavors. See if there's something there you like. Thank you for the super chat. Obviously, anybody wants to help support the channel, super chats are another great way to do that. We really appreciate it. Joshua Fortaleza is a fantastic one as well. I think I did mention that. Ray seconds Fortaleza. Here's a good question from EBA 101 Boxing. Are you going to compare tiers to the new batch? We do have a plan to do that. I swapped up what I'm doing today, and instead I'm going to be drinking these Tequila ArteNOMs because I think that the tiers comparison would be a good one for all three of us to do together. So you get everybody's perspective on that. But yeah, I do plan to do that because I do have one of the newer batches, and we still have maybe a little less than half of the first batch, the one that got platinum. I keep saying platinum. Diamond. I don't even know our own ranking system. Okay, I'm starting to lose my voice because I'm talking too much. That means I need to crack something open here. So the first one is this Blanco. So ArteNOM has at any given time about 4 or 5 different expressions. I think right now they've got 4 different ones. I think they've got 2 Blancos, a Reposado, and an Añejo. And I've got one of the Blancos and the Añejo here today that I'm going to be cracking into. This one is from NOM 1579, which I pointed out is the same NOM as G4, and it's also by the same master distiller, Felipe Camarena. I always screw his name up. G4 is an excellent tequila, and I have high hopes for this one as well. Get a close-up of the bottle here. Kind of minimalist bottles in some ways. You know, they've got kind of plain labels on them, some of the stats on it there. They do show the regions and, you know, where the distillery is on the back. These are really pretty cool program. And I've not tried any of them, so I'm really looking forward to cracking into them, seeing how they're doing. And there's no pull tab on this bottle, so this is going to be fun. All right, show's over. Can't open the bottle. Just kidding. I came prepared. All right. Oh, that was a tight cork. Synthetic cork, which I'm a fan of. You will occasionally, now with Fortaleza, get some corks that stick. And sometimes I've heard people say they get cork taint with Fortaleza. So they do use the natural corks, but looks nice. But you know, I'm a big fan of the synthetic stuff. So obviously a Blanco, it's going to be pretty much crystal clear. The nose is extremely refreshing. I get that very typical bright agave. I mean, it's almost like somebody squeezed some lime in here already. There's a really subtle sweetness in it. It's almost like a sugar cookie, like a really faint sugar cookie. I wasn't expecting that on the nose. All right, give this one a sip. Wow, it is buttery. Oh man, that sugar cookie thing is coming back. It is. It's got a little bit of that agave kick. So it's got that sweetness and then that agave kick that kind of punches through with this kind of citrusy cactus kind of taste that is just the flavor of agave. It's a hard one to compare to anything except for kind of like citrus rind. Wow. That's really enjoyable. Yeah, it's not an off-putting citrus hit or kind of a rind. It's slightly drying, but I don't know if that's just because I was talking too much and my mouth kind of dried out. Let me try one more time after a sip of water. Consistency actually does look pretty nice. You know, that's one of the things I've found with some of these Blancos is it's hard to probably see on the camera, but the legs that it forms on the glass are actually pretty nice on this one. If you guys saw our Fortaleza drink through, the the Lot 100, which is a very unique kind of Blanco that they distilled to 80 proof and then, released it, which is just such an interesting concept to me. I mean, usually things are distilled to a much higher proof. In the case of whiskeys and aged products, they're put into the barrel at, anywhere from, 100 to 150 proof, depending on what product it is. For bourbon, for instance, it can be a max of 125. But with the Fortaleza Lot 100, they were distilling it, and they stopped as soon as the proof hit 80, and they basically just bottled it. It's just very interesting. It's hard to put into words, but it really affected the mouthfeel. It had this really syrupy consistency. So yeah, this is very enjoyable. Price point on this one, I think I thought I had left the price sticker on. I think it's in the mid 30s. So based on what I'm tasting here, I think that's a fair price. It's a really nice, tasty Blanco. You'd probably lose a lot of the nuance and subtlety if you mixed it. The philosophy that I think a lot of people have with margaritas is the better the tequila, the better the margarita, which I can't disagree with. But at the same time, it's one of those laws of diminishing returns, or law of diminishing returns, where you hit a certain point and you're going to maybe increase the price of the tequila by $20, $30, $40, but the quality of the margarita is not really going to go up that much. So when you're in that kind of $10 to $30 range, you'll see a big improvement. Above that, when you're mixing it, you're not going to see that much. So I'm rambling. Let me get to some comments here, guys. Anuj, would I recommend this ArteNOM? Well, this one, if you're into Blancos, and I don't think a lot of tequila novices are super into Blancos. It tends to be a lot more of the aficionados who really get into Blancos. And for them, I would definitely recommend this. But if you're newer, this might be a little bit, the things about this that are nicer than maybe a cheaper or easier to find Blanco, it's very nuanced. So I don't know that it would be something for somebody more on the novice end, but it's definitely very tasty. Nick P says, however many he says he's going to drink, you can add 5 more to that. I'm a professional. Exactly. I just can't do math either, I think. Here's a good question from Ben. Question for tequila sippers. Bourbon generally has those quintessential flavors, oak, cherry, vanilla. What are the quintessential flavors of tequila? So, great question. The number one is agave. Obviously, it's an agave spirit. I would equate that almost to the kind of traditional sweetness that you would get in a bourbon. It's something that is there in varying degrees in different tequilas. It has kind of a citrusy, maybe like a citrus rind quality to it. And it is usually present all the way through, a Blanco, all the way through a very heavily aged product. Where you won't see that is in tequilas that have been adulterated or have additives in them. We've talked about that problem in some of our other tequila videos, so I won't get too deep into it here unless people have specific questions about it. We actually talked about it quite a bit in one of our recent podcasts. So if you're interested in that, check out that podcast from maybe like 3 weeks ago. But yeah, that's definitely one of the things. There's an earthiness that can come through on a lot of them, almost analogous to kind of the grainy component that can come through in bourbons. You'll get floral notes in addition to that kind of citrusy agave hit. And then obviously you'll get the barrel influence with the aged products. And depending on what kind of barrels they use, depending on how many times they reuse them, those will take very different forms. So, when you start getting into the reposados and añejos, you can have very different, things can go in a lot of different directions at that point. You can get whiskey type flavors coming through in some of those because they use a lot of reused bourbon barrels. All right, question from Silent Screams. Can you rate Don Julio 1942 to both Tears of Llorona and Tapatio Extra Añejo? You mean do you want us to do a side-by-side or just kind of off the top of my head? I do know that Don Julio uses additives now. And from everybody I've talked to, it changed pretty dramatically maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And quite frankly, I think the last time I had it was before they changed it over. I used to really like it. So I haven't actually tried the new formulation, but we'll get our hands on a bottle at some point and definitely maybe do a review or do this comparison with it. I will tell you, I can't really think of many extra añejos that can compare to Tears of Llorona. Even the Tapatio Excelencia, it's just a different beast. They're both really good, but I mean, Tears kind of just, in my opinion, takes it to another level. Ray hit the nail on the head here. Yes, using tears would not be recommended. That being said, I am genuinely curious, curiosity public, I'm genuinely curious what that would taste like. I have no idea. I would never do it. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I'm sure somebody's done it. All right, Godzilla says, we just got some Tequila Ocho Añejo single barrel store pick. Is it worth 120? I don't know if the Ocho Añejo, for some reason, I think it's usually cheaper than that. I don't know if you're paying for the pick. I don't know a lot about Ocho. I know a lot of people say it's very good. I have not done a dive into it, so I really can't give you a good answer on it. But from what I understand, it is one of the well-made additive-free tequilas out there. So Anuj says, I'm more of a Scotch drinker, so should I go for an Añejo or an extra Añejo? You know, I usually say yes, but I've been surprised before where Scotch people will come in and gravitate towards the Blancos because they've got that stronger agave hit. So maybe if you really like peated Scotch, for instance, maybe you'll find the agave hit better than the more mellow, sweeter, barrel influenced flavors of an extra Añejo. So again, you know, Dylan said this before, and I think in our Tapatio drink through, which is, you know, if you can try a Blanco and an Añejo and then figure out which side you like better, that's probably a good place to go. In general, when I'm talking to whiskey people, I do say start with even the extra Añejos. I mean, they're the most expensive ones. You know, agave is just a more expensive crop to harvest. Tequila is a more expensive spirit to make. Extra Añejos, even though they're only aged, you know, 3+ years, sometimes they're much more expensive than whiskeys that are aged that long. So, yeah, I tend to recommend the extra Añejos, but, you know, your mileage may vary. All right. So I am going to. Oh, here's a good question from Ray. What sort of glassware do you recommend for sipping tequila other than the Overture? I don't actually know. These are what we always use. Actually, I've got the box here. One of my good friends who is just a massive tequila nerd expert guy did he tried a bunch of glasses and he said the Riedel tequila glasses, they say tequila glass down here somewhere, probably in that box somewhere. That's not, yeah, it says tequila right there. Yeah, the Riedel tequila glasses are what I use, basically off of his recommendation. We do have a link. I think there should be a link in this description. If not, any of our other tequila videos should have a link directly to the ones that we use. I mean, I've had tequila out of just a rocks glass. I've had tequila out of Glencairn. Quite frankly, I mean, it's the same thing with whiskey. Yeah, you'll get maybe a little bit more nuance on the aroma. You know, is there a huge difference between drinking out of this and even a Glencairn? I mean, the shape is similar. Your nose is a little bit further away with these, and I think that's the intent. So these are highly recommended from people that I've talked to that have tried the comparison, but I have not tried the comparison. So that would be a fun thing to do as a side by side. Okay, so I'm really enjoying this, but I'm going to move on here because I got a lot to get through tonight. I didn't realize. I feel like I'm talking too much. I don't know, maybe not. But I'm really intrigued to go on to the next bottle here, so I am going to do that. This, again, if you missed the beginning of the show, this is the ArteNOM 1146. And this is the same distillery as Tears of Llorona, 1146, and T1, which also is made by Armand. Look at that presentation. Very cool. Very cool. It's kind of like the Blood Oath boxes. And I'm going to put this down so I don't drop anything. All right. This. All right. So the 1146. Wow, look at the color on that. That is actually a very dark Añejo. Very dark. You know, you'll see some Añejos. I've got the bottle here, G4, which this is an Añejo also. Look how, I mean, it's almost empty, but look how light in color that is. Now, G4 is known to, I believe they're known to reuse barrels. And that's probably why you're getting a much lighter color on this one. This 1146, obviously very dark, very dark. I'm trying to see if it says what kind of barrels they used. They have a lot of information on their website, and they might say specifically which kind of barrels are used, but I did not look that up, unfortunately. So now this, even though it is from the same distillery as Tears of Llorona, it is from master distiller Enrique Fonseca, who puts out a tequila known as Fuente Seca, I think is what it's called. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the names of these. Another highly regarded master distiller. Again, there's no pull tab on these unless I just can't see it. There's a perforation, but there's no place to really start at it. So I'm going to use a bottle opener to open this bottle. Yeah, this one's proving to be a little bit more difficult. Oh, God. Really? There we go. The other thing that could happen is I just cut my hand and start bleeding profusely. All right. Wow, that cork was tight. Whew. All right, let me get a fresh glass. Put this one down so I don't knock it over, which I almost did. I can already smell it just coming out of the bottle. Wow. Oh my gosh, that is really nice. So price point on this one, I believe I got it for, gosh, it was either 65 or 75. I cannot remember off the top of my head. Wow, this is really tight cork. Total Wine has this. Actually, I think it was 75. That's my somewhere around there in the $60 to $70 range, I'll say. All right. So I should mention this. The 1579 is a Highland distillery. So we talked again about this in some of our tequila drink throughs, that the location kind of can play a little bit of a role in the way the flavors come across. The Highlands tend to be, I guess, it's volcanic soil, it's richer, you get sweeter agave plants that grow there, and that translates into the tequila as a little sweeter, a little fruitier. Whereas the lowlands, you'll get kind of an earthier component, vegetal component to it. I believe that this distillery, 1146, is on the slope, so it's not a fully high highland and it's not a lowland. Again, I'm not an expert on that level with tequila, so look at the absolutely amazing color on this glass. I mean, this is the color of Tears of Llorona, which is very, very dark. Wow. So, I mean, the barrel influence comes through on the nose. I mean, there's that hint of agave that everything's kind of built around. Wow, this is reminding me of something that's not a tequila. God, I cannot put my finger on it yet. Let me see. I mean, there's a really, really nice tequila core to this, but there's these layers of sweetness around it. There's some oak coming through. It's it's like a mixture of like a cherry and a floral thing coming through. It's just very nice. Wow. It's a little bit muted. I mean, it's not a punch you in the face flavor. There's a lot there. You know, I don't have the best nose, but I mean, it's a little bit delicate, but it's not hard to discern the different parts of it. It's like it's kind of maybe turned down a little bit. Let me see if aerating it a little bit will make the flavors pop a little more. Yeah, there's like a sugar, almost like a thinned out caramel. Wow, that's a very nice nose. All right, let's see how the palate is on this one. Wow. Wow. I mean, there's about three different stages of flavors I get on that. I got to unpack that a little bit here. Yeah, that's really good. Oh man. Uh, hot take after one sip, I would say if you can't get Tears of Llorona, you're getting some of it with this. It's different. I mean, Tears has the influence of so many different kinds of barrels that there's more layers to it, but the core of this, it does, evoke that flavor memory to me. A lot cheaper. Wow. And I'm kind of struggling to put this one into words here. Okay, let me take one more sip and see if I can describe it a little bit better. Okay, there's a hits the front of the palate almost very muted. As it hits the mid palate, the agave starts to kick through a little bit. And on the finish, I'm kind of hit with both this oak component and this sweet component. And it all kind of comes together on the finish, if that makes any sense. I don't know. This is a very excellent sipping experience right here, guys. This would do pretty well in our spirits competition, I think. Mm. There's a little bit of almost a tannic thing that rides through the middle of it, but it's not off-putting. It's kind of mixed with the agave core that kind of runs through the middle of this thing, that almost citrus rind. This is very complex, very complex. Great mouthfeel to it, great finish, great aroma. Yeah, this. If I had to guess, we'll see, but it would probably do pretty well in our spirits competition. So maybe we'll have to throw it into that. I actually wasn't expecting this. I'm very impressed with this. I might have to get myself a backup. That's the thing here about ArteNOM too. They haven't been around super long, and I know they've had other expressions in the past, and I don't know if they're going to go back and redo these in the future, or if every batch is going to be a little different. Um, But this is a tasty one, guys. So if you're into sipping spirits, and yeah, if you're actually, we got the question earlier about coming to tequila from Scotch. This is the kind of flavor profile that I would recommend for somebody coming from Scotch, because there's a lot going on here. It's not just kind of nuance of agave. It's agave core with all of these other barrel influenced flavors, things that come through on the age that are just very enjoyable and kind of fun to sip and pick apart. So very nice. Wow. But is it a diamond? um, I really do want to taste this at some point side by side with Tears. I off my memory, the Tears is just a little bit more complex. This could be a pretty high goal. This could get on the leaderboard. But then again, I don't know. Dylan and Jules might taste it and be like, it's crap. So that's the beauty of our spirits competition. But I definitely enjoy this. I would definitely recommend this. If you can find it in the, let's call it $60 to $80 range. I can check the price I paid, actually. I did get it at Total Wine. So, I mean, Total Wine does have differences, from location to location, but in usual, it's going to be around the same price probably. But that was excellent. Wow. I am not ready to change gears to bourbon just yet. So I'm going to drink a little water, look at some comments here, and then start cracking into some bourbon. All right. What color is the smell? Yeah, the color on that is just beautiful. I mean, I got a little bit left in here. It's a very, very nice gold. I mean, it's the color of a nice scotch or whiskey or bourbon. Very nice. All right. So people are saying around $80 where they are. Okay. I think that's, yeah, I think it was around like 75. For some reason that's in my head, but it might have been 79. So yeah, maybe 80 is what I paid. Here's a question from Anuj. How about the Casa Azul? Beautiful bottle, not so beautiful tequila. We do have a review of that we filmed. Should be coming out in the next few weeks. It's part of our backlog, so it's even with the old set design behind us. But that one is coming in the future. So, what do you pay that Dylan guy to do nothing on lives? Exactly. Yeah, and Jules for not showing up today either. But I do think in 2 weeks we are planning another live, probably on the Friday, and we should have everybody for that one. And still trying to come up with what exactly we're going to do, but we'll try to pick some good bottles for that since we'll have everybody here. Okay, I am going to switch gears here, and instead of jumping right into the Calumet, because I know a lot of people are interested in that one because it just came out, and I want to kind of give some notes on that and my thoughts on that. I am first, though, going to crack into this Four Roses that I grabbed today that I mentioned at the beginning. It is one of the single barrel strength bottles, 55% alcohol. It is the OBSK, which is the 35% rye mash bill. And of course, the other nomenclature there refers to the yeast strain that they use. And I think there's 10 total different combinations of mash bill and yeast strain with these barrel selects. And yeah, like I said at the beginning, I'm trying to get my hands on all 10. And we will try to do maybe a drink through. I don't know what would be more interesting, a drink through or a blind. In some ways, I kind of feel like the drink through where we know what each one is and we can kind of discuss the differences as we go might be more interesting. But of course, a blind is always fun too because, you know, the odds of all three of us picking the same combination would be, I don't know, I think that would be pretty low. So I don't know. Maybe we'll do both. Maybe we'll, I don't know, spread it out over a couple of different episodes. All right, Devin says he just opened a Four Roses single barrel. SS? Guessing you mean single barrel? I don't know. Cask strength? I don't know. Yeah, I love these though. I mean, Four Roses is the bourbon that kind of got me back into bourbon. I was pretty much on a big tequila kick at that point in my life, and then I toured Four Roses, and at the end of it, did the tasting that they take you on. Which at that point in time, they just had three expressions. They just had the yellow label. At that point, it was a yellow label instead of the gray label they have now. The small batch and the single barrel, and tasting those and kind of going through that experience was just one of these like, oh yeah, wow, bourbon's really fun to sip on, and that kind of got me back into it way back in the day. So I always have a soft spot for Four Roses. And let's see how this one is. I've got that noise cancellation software running again, so I don't know if any of this bottle pouring or cork pops are coming through, but it sounds good to me. So if it's not coming through, maybe I'll just turn it off for future lives. Oh, SS is the warehouse. Got it. Oh, see, they're just more advanced than I am. Cool. This one, KE. All right. So drink through would be cool for that. That would be cool. Yeah. I think either one. I mean, I think people love seeing blinds, but I don't know. For some reason, I feel like a drink through may be a little bit more informative. And that's exactly, so Godzilla has a question here. Do I have a recipe I prefer? Part of the reason I want to do them all side by side is to kind of, it's just to see. I mean, I think I've tried all of them at some point or another, but I've never really been very careful about keeping track. So I definitely want to do them all and see how it is. So, all right, got to shift brain gears here from tequila to bourbon. Wow, there's a really, really nice sweetness coming through on this. Good amount of caramel too. Wow, fantastic nose on this thing, man. All right, let me check palate. Mm. Right, I set this thing up so I can put the bottle here, so you know what I'm drinking. Doesn't work unless I put the bottle there, though. Oh wow, that's excellent. So it's a little bit hard to tease out any specific flavors on the nose, aside from kind of this caramel coming through. Good amount of sweetness. I'm not really picking out any distinctive fruits, but the palate's excellent on this. Let me see, give some notes here. Oh, it's got a nice little pepper hit on the finish. Lets you know it's there. Sweetness comes through on all levels. Still not really picking out any strong fruit flavors. Let me see again. A little bit drying, a little bit oaky. This one just might need to open up a little bit. I'm going to pour a little bit more in here. I just happened to, I don't know why I took such big sips there. But I'm going to let this sit for a second here because I think I just drank it too quickly. Look at some of these comments here. So Ray says, Four Roses Single Barrel was the bourbon that made me like bourbon. I was on an Isla Scotch kick at the time. I love the cask strength ones. Definitely worth hunting for. Yeah, I mean, Four Roses cask strengths are excellent. It's to me, it's always one of those bourbons that brings something a little bit different to the flavor profile. You know, it's that layer of kind of perfumey floral essence that's a little bit different than a fruit component, different than an oak component, different than the traditional sweets that you get in a bourbon. So it's always very nice. A little bit, sometimes a little more subtle on the palate, which I think is why it kind of gets overshadowed by things like Stag and things like that that have really big, bold, punch you in the face flavors. So it's, you know, depends on how your palate reacts to both of those. So why would a blind be different than a drink through? Isn't it still analyzing what you're drinking? Yeah, I just meant as far as what we would be able to communicate. I think for doing it as a drink through where we're kind of going one recipe at a time and talking about it and giving our notes as we go versus a blind where we're going to pour a bunch of things. We'll probably have to do it in two sets, tasting them, talk and just picking a favorite and kind of giving some notes as we go. Might just be a little bit more confusing as far as presenting all the information was my thought. So, but I kind of think it might be kind of fun to do both, do a drink through and then do a blind after that. I don't know. Might knock us out though too much. So, so Anush says, what was the ABV on the 1146? I think it's an 80 proof. Most tequilas are going to come in at 80 proof. Yeah, 80 proof. I think the other one was as well. Yeah. Yep. I mean, you'll sometimes see some. I think Tears of Llorona is a little bit higher, and then you'll see some higher cask strength blancos, but things go into the cask usually at a lower proof. So a lot of those cask strength blancos will be like 110-ish range, around 110. All right, let me try this one more time here. This Four Roses. I think the tequila is throwing my palate off a little bit. Yeah, really like this nose. It's subtle. The floral component is coming through now. Really nice. Okay, now I'm starting to get it. Yeah, there's a good amount of oak on this one. The age on this I think is exactly 1 year. Uh, just shy 1 year, 10 years. Sorry, just shy of 10 years. So it's barreled April 2011, bottled March 4th, 2021. So almost 10 years, which is kind of what I see a lot of these at these days. You'll see anywhere between 9 and 10 years usually. Hmm. It is a little bit drying. I mean, this is a little bit oakier than some of the other ones I've had. The sweetness that I'm getting on the nose isn't really coming through on the palate as much. Certainly not bad. I mean, I love Four Roses and could easily sit here and sip on this. So I'm going to pour up a splash more because I actually think it would be kind of interesting. I'm going to let this sit and then compare it maybe to the other bourbons I'm going to open. But as I've learned my lesson in the past, I need to label these, otherwise I will lose track of what is what. So this is my Four Roses. All right. What is next? It's going to be the Calumet 15. So as I mentioned, we did do a review of the 14, which I guess I should do a side-by-side of these as well. So I'll pour that as well in a second. I mean, you can go back and watch our review of it. We didn't necessarily love it. For the price you're paying, which is over $100, I think the same price as the 15, which I believe is 120-ish, 119-ish. You can find the 14 these days on sale sometimes. I've seen it recently around 99. I think ultimately that was kind of our take home. I mean, it's good bourbon. It's tasty. It just didn't really wow any of us. And when you see this high of an age statement, maybe we were just expecting more than it was giving. And then at that price point, it didn't really blow us away. And then of course, this came out at the same time as the Sam Houston, which, did I bring that up here? Yeah. Which is from the same source and a lot of people preferred. And I think even we did prefer the Sam Houston, but this one also didn't necessarily blow us away. And these were smaller batches in the Sam Houston. The batches for the Calumet are a lot bigger, 19-barrel batches. For instance, this Sam Houston is only a 3-barrel batch. Got all the stats right there. And this is the one from Missouri. Up there you can see the batch number MO2. And from what I understand, different states got different batches. Some of the batches were transcendent. Some of them, maybe like this one, were just okay, not bad, certainly not bad. But when you're talking about spending $100, $120 on a bourbon, maybe a little bit overpriced, depending on who you ask. But that was kind of our takeaway on both of those. And then we did do a big blind, which I'm embarrassed a little bit because we put both the Calumet, the Sam Houston against two other Barton products, the Barton 1792 single barrel and the other bottle I brought up here, Walking Stick single barrel, which is like a $20, $30 bottle. And yes, if you've seen that episode, it was a blind and I picked the Walking Stick. So yeah, maybe I just have a weird thing going on with Barton products and I like the lower proof one. I don't know. I don't know if that's not my proudest moment on the show, but I'm always happy to be embarrassed. All right, let's crack into this go. 15 years, a little higher proof. I am looking forward to trying this. I think somebody else put a review out of this recently. I don't remember. I think the Bourbon Junkies might have done it already. Somebody else, Drums and Drams, maybe. So it's out there. It just kind of came out, and I am curious to see how it is. All right. Let this sit here for a second and catch up a little bit on the chats. I'm not used to having this thing here. I'm always afraid I'm going to knock it over. All right. Yes, that like button seems lonely. Needs a few more clicks. We got over 60 people in here right now, looks like, and not enough likes. So everybody that's watching this, just click that like button. Helps the channel out a lot. Helps our stats with the YouTubes. All right, James in SoCal says, or James SoCal, I'm just adding words to people's names here. Picking up some Calumet 15 this weekend. The 14 really needed time to open up. Got much better after a few weeks. Yeah, I don't think I've had the 14 since we filmed our blind. There was a fair amount of time between when I got it and opened it and when we reviewed it and then when we did the blind. So I don't know. It didn't change that much between that amount of time, but hey, it's been sitting now for at least a couple months. So maybe when I try it tonight, it'll be even better. Devin Patel says, my favorite Johnny Walker is red, no worries. Yes. Hey, that's the fun thing about doing blinds. You never know. Yeah, the Bourbon Junkies did. Any thoughts on the San Francisco World Spirits Competition? I have a lot of thoughts on it. Um, and that's kind of why we decided we're always complaining about spirits competition. So that's why we kind of started the Ultimate Spirits Competition because, we don't have the prestige, but, why listen to them? It's not transparent necessarily. You don't know where the bottles are coming from. There's a lot of, when you get into single barrel reviews, and distilleries are sending these bottles to the reviewers. Who knows? Are they picking the honey barrels, setting them aside for spirits competitions? There's just a lot of questions. I've met some judges there before. Some of them I think have great palates. Some of them have great palates for certain spirits, but a lot of them will review more than just one kind of spirit. They do probably a better job than a lot of the other spirits competitions. So don't get me wrong. There's a lot of them that are just rackets. They'll get 3 or 4 different brands. They'll get a bunch of publicity. They'll spend a lot of money advertising, and it's basically an ad buy for these brands that submit to them. And they get like maybe 10 brands, right? So San Francisco is great because they get a lot, and it's always interesting to see what the list is. I'll say that. So I don't mean to talk crap about them. All right. Ooh, very nice nose. Okay, so a much bolder nose than, for instance, the Four Roses, which I still have sitting here. The Four Roses is a lot lighter, more oak coming through on the Calumet. It's a nice amount of sugar coming through. A little bit of ethanol. Wow, yeah, very nice nose. Much better than what I recall the 14 being. Yeah, I'm looking forward to tasting this now. Yeah, great. This is really good. Yeah. It's the barrel's coming through, the oakiness is there, not overly tannic, good amount of sweetness. Finishes a little quick. Again, that's first sip. I'll give it another sip and give a proper analysis of the palate, but first hit is pretty damn good. This to me is drinking a little bit higher than the proof. I mean, to me, this is a little bit, it tastes proofier than the Four Roses, which is higher. I think the Four Roses is 110. This is a 105 proof. So it's drinking a little above proof. That might mellow as it's open for a while, but it's kind of invoking my memory of the old Elijah Craig 12 year in a lot of ways. That level of oakiness, which is for me, that's kind of my sweet spot. Same with Michter's 10-year single barrel. That really hits just to the level of oakiness that I like. And this is kind of right there, and it's older than both of those. Maybe a tiny bit drying. Let me get a little water before I take my next sip. Yeah, it's a little spicier. I mean, it's definitely drinking above proof for me. A little bit spicier on the finish than, I think that's what I would knock it on a little bit. And the flavors do taper off pretty quickly on the finish. The oak is the predominant flavor there. There might be a little bit of like apple. Um, yeah, tasty. So far, definitely prefer this over the 14. They're priced the same. This one makes a lot more sense to me at that price point. So let me label this and pour myself a little bit of the 14 for a quick comparison here. I do have one more glass. I did not bring enough glasses, but that's okay. All right, let me check into the chat here real quick. So let's see here. James says Cam said the Calumet 15 won his taste test. All right, I saw that he put a video, and I saw that the Junkies put one out, and I didn't really want to hear him before I had a chance. I didn't want to taint my impressions of it, so I'll have to go back and watch both of those. Here's a good question from Marvin. From your experience, how long can you leave a bottle after opening? Is a few years okay? So assuming you're talking about distilled spirit like a whiskey, anything, let's say 80 proof and higher, I've personally never had anything go bad. I've had flavors evolve. There's a video we did a few months back. I think we called it like, does whiskey change over time or something like that? And we compared 2 bottles of Michter's single barrel 10-year, one that had been open for, I think, like over 6 months and up to a brand new one. So the flavors can definitely change. It's a subtle change. I've had bottles, I think it's more prominent in finished whiskey. So Joseph Magnus comes to mind because that's finished, I think, in sherry. Is it sherry? I think it's sherry. And that one really got sweeter after it sat for a while. But as far as things going bad, I think, yeah, you're going to be on the magnitude of years before as long as the cork is a pretty good seal, I don't think there's any reason it would. If you're scared about it, you can get some of those argon gas spray things that they make for wine. That would be kind of a surefire way to make sure nothing happens. Me personally, I've never encountered that. I've had some bottles sitting around for like 4 or 5 years that I've cracked back into them and they're still fine. Vermouth can go bad, but yeah, and I think some other lower proof products can. But yeah, I don't think when you get to whiskey, you're going to experience that too much. All right. So Tim C says, and it seems at the San Fran one, at least everything wins a double gold. That's the entry trophy. Yeah. A lot of things get gold, double gold. I mean, I think people say that about ours, everything getting silver at least. But I'm sure there's things that get entered into that you don't end up reading about that don't place. It just seems like there's a lot of things that get gold. Yeah, you're right. All right, good question here from Yeah Dude. Does it seem like age statements and older bourbons are making a comeback to me? Yes, it definitely does. I think that's going to continue to happen. I think as soon as the big boys, the big distilleries realized that the bourbon boom was kind of here, they started to just expand. I mean, every single one of the big distilleries expanded within the last probably 10 years. So a lot of people talk about there's going to be this huge amount of well-aged product coming from the big players. So it's probably going to hurt the newer distilleries and the kind of the craft distilleries that are sourcing, depending on how their sourcing contracts are set up. But I mean, look at what Knob Creek is doing. I mean, they've returned the 9-year age statement. They're coming out with a 12-year regular issue. They had their 15-year, which seems like they're going to be releasing it on the regular, or at least something that's pretty highly aged on the regular. And at prices that it's just hard to beat. I mean, their 15-year, like this one, around $100. I think that's a pretty fair price for something that's been sitting in a barrel for 15 years. I mean, consider the taxes and the evaporation. I mean, it's expensive to store bourbon for that long. But yeah, I do think it's making a comeback. Even some of the kind of second phase distilleries that started building out 5 or 6 years ago, like Bullet, I think they're going to be having 5 or 6 year old distillate of their own pretty soon. And so I think age statements could see a comeback. Whether or not that matters, that's another question. It's nice to see. I like to know what I'm drinking just from an analytical perspective. But I've had really tasty 4 or 5 year old bourbons, and I've had 18-year-old bourbons that I didn't think were that good. So again, it's nice to have the info, and I do think you're going to see more of them, especially from the big boys. I don't know. people are always have the speculation of not knob, Maker's Mark coming out with something age stated. And I know that they're releasing this kind of experimental series where they're going to be releasing products at different proofs and with different ages. And they're going to be actually putting age statements on those. So we're really looking forward to that because that's totally up our alley. And it'll be really interesting to see how age affects the Maker's Mark profile. So good question. Okay, so Marvin, to follow up, awesome, thanks. And yeah, I did see that episode where you did the comparison for a while against something new. I think it was a Michter's. I'm pretty certain because I was holding on to those bottles. It was Michter's 10-year single barrel, and I happened to have two bottles that had the exact same barrel number on them, so I knew they were from the exact same barrel, and that's why we did them that way. So here, perfect follow-up. Oops, clicked on the wrong thing. From Eric, there's a belief that a neck pour is a fallacy. The thought is when you first open a bottle, it's probably the first pour you had that day, hence your palate isn't warmed up. So yeah, definitely warming up the palate is a thing. In some ways, I feel like your first sip does such a good job of setting your palate that, I feel like always trust your second and third sips more than your first sip, regardless. But yeah, I would point you to that episode I was just talking about there with Marvin, which which we did that. We compared a bottle that was brand new, unopened, from the exact same barrel, single barrel with the same barrel number, to one that had been open for I think it was like 6 or 7 months. And there was a difference. We did them side by side. We did them blind, so we didn't know which one was which, and it was pretty clear there was a difference. I think we had a split vote. I think two of us thought that the one that had been open for longer. Actually, I think we both thought the same one was better, which is the one that was open longer. And I think Jules and I guessed that it was the one that was open longer, and Dylan, for some reason, thought it was the new bottle. But yeah, so flavors can definitely evolve. You're not going to see drastic changes, I think, but there are subtle things that will happen just from exposure to air. So, to some extent, is the neck pour fallacy? I don't know. Like I said, the flavor, it's not like it changes drastically, but I would say subtly. All right, so I haven't even taken a sip or smell of the 14, so it's been opening up. Well, it's better than what I remembered, quite frankly. Less oaky. There's a good amount of sugar coming through compared to the 15 here. I should use different color stickers, huh? Let me do that so it's clearer on the camera here. So the 14 will be the green sticker, and the 15 has the yellow, just so it's clear. All right. So again, nose here. 14-year, yeah, good amount of sweetness. A little bit of grain coming through. Almost no oak, despite the fact that it's 14 years old. So the 15, wow, it does have more proof. Kind of an equivalent amount of sweetness. It's interesting. Side by side, the oak doesn't come through as much. It's there. There's definitely more oak on the 15, but it's more subtle when you do them side by side. The 14's almost got a brighter nose. Not necessarily better, but just a little bit stronger flavor wise. All right, check the palate again. 14-year. It's very different. There's a little oak reading on the palate. It's extremely drinkable, but it's just like there's no finish. It's smoother, if people like that descriptor. Very drinkable, but it's not terribly flavorful. It's kind of thin tasting. Yeah, very mellow. Very mellow. Yeah, it's pretty much as I remember it. Maybe a little bit more of the oak is reading on it than what I recall from when we reviewed it. So let me do a quick side by side on the palate. So I just tasted the 14. Let me try the 15 again. Yeah, there's much more here. Getting a wash of that oakiness. Like I said, just up to that point where it's like an enjoyable oakiness. And I feel like I tend to have a kind of a low threshold for oakiness. I'm one of those people that I don't love the E.H. Taylor small batch because there's something about the level of oak in that just hits my palate the wrong way. This is kind of right on the edge. It kind of comes right up to it, but it doesn't cross it for me. So the 15 here, really enjoying this. Oh, it's very reminiscent of that Elijah Craig 12 year. It's funny. I don't know why it's reminding me of that so much. Yeah, clearly more flavorful. I mean, the 14 just doesn't taste like anything after having the 15 side by side like this. And I mean, there is the proof difference, right? So what is this one? The 14, am I blind? 48.1%. So that's 96.2, and this is a 105 proof. So 52.5. So that's a pretty good jump. That's a pretty good jump. And I mean, I wouldn't put these in a blind side by side because that's to me that's a significant enough proof difference that this is just going to have more coming at you. Period. Yeah, definitely think my take home the 15 year at 120. You're not going to feel let down. It's got a lot of flavor. It would be a great one to blind with the old Elijah Craig. Again, there's enough of a proof difference there that this 15 might edge it out. But again, you got to remember that old 12-year Elijah Craig was on store shelves for $35, less than that sometimes. So I miss those days, and that's such an excellent product. But yeah, this is an enjoyable one. I would think that if you kind of like that oaky hit in a bourbon, this is definitely one you would enjoy. So, all right, should I throw the Sam Houston into the mix, or should I throw my favorite, the walking stick in? Or should I crack something completely different open? I don't know. I didn't bring anything else over here. There's some stuff on our shelf. I feel like the Sam Houston 14 isn't going to be that relevant because they're coming out with their 15 as well, and I feel like that's going to be the big one to compare it to. Oh, I've still got my Four Roses, so let's try the Four Roses that's been sitting here, the single barrel strength that I poured earlier. Let's see how it stacks up to a double whammy of Calumet Farm. I mean, it's such a different nose. I mean, completely different nose. It's interesting. I talked a little bit when I was first tasting the Four Roses about the floral component that you like in a Four Roses, or at least that I like in a Four Roses. Of course, it's always funny that it's Four Roses and it has that strong floral component, perfumey almost. But it's almost like that is more pronounced now, which is very interesting. Wow, it's such a different flavor profile. I mean, there's almost no oak reading on this Four Roses. It's proofier, so I think the proof is really helping it, and it's punching through with almost a more crisp, less oaky, but more fruity, floral flavor profile, and a different kind of sweetness, where the 15 here kind of has that more caramel, dark fruit sweetness to it. The Four Roses has a lighter, more, nah, maybe not necessarily citrusy fruitiness, but like a white sugar as opposed to a brown sugar difference there. So definitely holding its own. And I think that, this kind of defines the differences in flavor profiles that people like. Some people like this kind of sweetness. Some people like the darker, more caramel, like burnt sweetness. So interesting. All right. So let me catch up on some chats here and then figure out what I'm going to do next. And drop some comments. Let me know if there's something in particular you would like to see and I happen to have it here. I will do that instead. But right now I'm thinking Sam Houston 14 might be another interesting one to pour in comparison to these. course, the other option is the walking stick, which again, same distillery. It's lower proof, so I don't think at 90 proof it's not gonna beat out this 15. I don't think. But anyway, let me know what you guys think, and if there's something else and it sounds interesting enough, and I got it here, maybe I'll do that instead. So drop some comments, guys. I'm gonna scroll up here a little bit because I missed a bunch of comments. Oh, I didn't miss too many. All right, here's Joshua. The 14-year-old store pick Knob Creeks for 50 to 60 bucks is a steal and tasty. Absolutely agree. I have not seen very many of them in the past few months. Seems like almost everything is in that 9-year range. I found one recently that was a 12-year, which was excellent. Knob Creek is just, for bang for the buck, it's so hard to beat it. It's just so hard to beat them right now. Even the 9-year 120 proof stuff that you'll find is just, how do you compete with that? It's unbelievable. Marvin, don't be embarrassed. I forget episodes and I was there. So it's okay. All right. So yeah, Blind Squirrel, the 1 year to me definitely did make a pretty big difference. Yeah. And again, it could be partially also barrel selection. You know, we don't know what warehouse they're getting them from. It is the same mash bill, but barrel selection, and I guess a full year can make a pretty big difference, because me personally, my palate, strong preference for the 15. All right, James SoCal says, glad to hear you like the 15 better. Hope I feel the same. I was having buyer's remorse on the 120 price tag. Yeah. I had a little bit of that with the 14. I don't really feel that with the 15. I mean, it's not, you know, it's if you were to compare this to like an Elijah Craig barrel proof or a Stag Junior or a George T. Stag or Woodford batch proof, I mean, those are going to blow it out, but mostly because of proof. As far as the flavors you're getting here, I think if you watered any of those down to like 105 proof like this, it's fairly comparable. Again, you could get the 1792 full proofs, and I think you're getting a similar experience, but this has the added age, and you get that layer of oak, and the oak is here. You can definitely taste it. It tastes like well-aged bourbon. So it's yeah. If you like that oaky hit and you like a well-aged bourbon like that, you're gonna enjoy this. All right, yeah, dude. Part 2 to my first question. Now that distillers know what they can get away with, will we ever see the 12-year Elijah Craig type bourbons for $35 again? Great question. I think that we might have kind of like a mic drop moment from one of the big players. I could see that, because a guy, you know, a distillery like, I mean, even Buffalo Trace at this point, or Knob Creek. I mean, Knob Creek is kind of doing that with their 12-year-old, which I think is excellent. You know, if they decided to come out with their 12-year-old cask strength, but they have released it as a limited release. I don't know if any of it hit the West Coast, because I've never been able to get my hands on a bottle of it. I'd love to try it, because I do like a lot of the Knob Creek stuff, but I feel like one of those big players could come out with a cask strength. I mean, look at Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, right? It's a 12-year-old cask strength, delicious bourbon, age stated. You know, as far as finding something at the $35 mark with that high of an age statement, I think Knob Creek is the closest with their 9-year stuff. Is there anything else with an age statement? I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, to my point, I could see in the next 5 years one of the big guys, all right, like Jim Beam with Knob Creek, or maybe even Four Roses. Four Roses has never been an age statement, really. Maybe Buffalo Trace, maybe Barton. Maybe Makers. I mean, I've heard stories about how Makers has 10-year-old stuff at cask strength that they could just, if they felt like it, they could just release it and blow everybody out of the water. I don't know if that's actually true or not. I don't know if they would ever do it. But I don't know. I mean, the bourbon boom doesn't show any signs of slowing down, so I could see at some point one of the big boys saying, all right, let's just throw some nice age-stated stuff into the mix, and let's just see what happens. Let's just drop it. Great questions, though. I mean, this if you like that kind of stuff, we sometimes will delve into those questions in our podcast, so check those out. Ross, whoa, single barrel strength. Yes, the Four Roses single barrel strength. They are store picks, so that means that you usually have to find a liquor store. This one's actually from a grocery store here on the West Coast, Bristol Farms. But you know, the big chain stores will get them. Independent stores will sometimes do them, and they are usually not super high proof. This one's at 110. I've had a couple that are a little bit higher, but they usually don't get quite as high as I don't think I've seen anything over like 120. Maybe might be the highest I've seen. So, all right. Yeah, Ray already answered your question, so I'm late to the game. Sorry. Okay. Let me catch up here. Weller drink through. Yes, we're working on it. We still are trying to get a bottle of the. I think we still need the single barrel and the CYPB. But other than that, yeah, I mean, we might just pull the trigger at a certain point and just do one without those two. Let me catch up here. I'm behind. All right, Ray, thank you so much for the super chat and a great question because I am representing for May the 4th here a little bit as well. Favorite Star Wars villain from either the movies. I think you mean, or the extended universe, Clone Wars, Rebels, books, games, etc. Wow, favorite villain. You know, I think after having watched, Clone Wars and Rebels all the way through, I kind of have to go with Darth Maul just because of the depth they gave him. I mean, there were moments of it that I felt were a little bit cheesy, maybe, but by the end of watching all that whole series, he's a much more interesting character than almost anybody else. By the same token, obviously, Darth Vader's story arc is incredible if you catch him all the way from Anakin forward. So, yeah, I don't think I ever would have said Darth Maul if I hadn't watched the Clone Wars. And the Clone Wars surprised me. I'd seen maybe like the first season of it way back when, and I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. But then I decided, actually during lockdown, I was like, all right, just watch the whole thing, and I was blown away, and especially the later seasons. The animation was incredible. The stories became just amazing, and it's kind of cool to see the Bad Batch now. So I do geek out on it. As far as the books, I never got super into the books. I did read some of I think I read like the first couple Timothy Zahn ones way back in the day. I've played some of the games. The old X-Wing and TIE Fighter back in the game, the flight sim ones, Knights of the Old Republic. And then some of the more recent ones, so Force Unleashed and what's the new one? Like, I can't remember the most recent one. I'm blanking. Anyway, but yeah, I do enjoy them. So, good question. We need more Star Wars content because I will have way too much fun with that. All right, back to bourbon. Count Dooku, yeah. Dooku has a great storyline too. I mean, especially in Clone Wars. I mean, the kind of like the flashbacks when he was still with the Jedi. That's cool. So, Ray, I just finished Clone Wars yesterday and started Rebels. I did the same thing as you, started Clone Wars years ago. Yep. Yeah, and Rebels surprised me too. I didn't think I was going to like Rebels, but man, by the end of it, I want to see these characters more. So, very cool if you've watched Mandalorian as well, how they've kind of really picked up parts of that arc, which is cool to see. Force Unleashed. I think it's Force Unleashed is the game I'm thinking of. Yeah, very fun. I haven't finished it. I actually fired that back up at some point during lockdown. I feel like the older I'm getting, the worse I'm getting at playing video games. It's just pathetic. So, all right, so let me get back to the bourbon here. I'm going to pour a little bit of the Sam Houston 14. So I'm going to finish off my Four Roses here and just use this glass since I don't want to go grab another one. That is excellent. I am really looking forward to doing our Four Roses drink through with all of the different barrel pick formulas. Because like I said, that's kind of the bourbon that really got me here. And it's always fun to go back and try those things. So we are now pouring Sam Houston. Got to keep my labels straight. So again, Sam Houston 14, same distillery from Barton. Same age statement as the Calumet. I think for most people's opinions, and even when we did them both, even the batch we had, which we weren't crazy about, we did think it was better than the Calumet. So yeah, the nose. Wow, the nose is really sugary now. That's really nice. I'm gonna let this sit for a second because I've let the others sit for so long and catch up on the chat. Just because there's so much good Star Wars chat, guys. This is turning into a Star Wars stream. I should just do that. Uh, yeah, after Clone Wars, definitely Grand Darth Maul. Yeah, they just added so much depth to him as a character. And actually, his I don't know if you want to call it a cameo, but his appearance in the Solo movie makes sense after seeing Clone Wars. If you hadn't seen Clone Wars, when he appears there and the way he appears, it doesn't really make sense until you've seen that, which is kind of cool. All right, the Blind Squirrel says, I wish they'd do a Palpatine backstory, how he kills Plagueis and becomes a Lord. Yeah, that would be really cool. I mean, who knows how old Palpatine is? And if you want to include the final trilogy, the 7, 8, 9 stories, do you want to then also kind of bring in the fact that there's all these clones? And some people are saying that the Palpatine that you see in Clone Wars all the way through Return of the Jedi is one of his clones and not the real Palpatine who Rey and Kylo meet in the end. I don't know. That all got kind of weird, but at this point, as far as I'm concerned, if it's not from Dave Filoni, it's not really Star Wars. Okay, let's get back to bourbon here. Michael Jonas, another one of our members. Thank you for being a member. Opinions on Four Roses Small Batch Select. I love it, but I love Four Roses. It's kind of like getting the small batch at a higher proof, and I think that's excellent. It is. It just kind of brings everything that I like about the Four Roses flavor profile out. And it's I still think it's a pretty underrated, regularly available bourbon, personally. But Four Roses can kind of split people. There's some people that just don't love that flavor profile, so I get that too. But I love it. All right, James, gotta head out. Cheers to everybody. Cheers to you as well. Aren't you like not in the U.S.? I think you're somewhere overseas, so it's probably either really late or really early. All right. And Savage. All right. Cool. All right. So let me give this Sam Houston another taster. So actually, let me compare the noses first. So Sam Houston first. It's a lot of sugar, not a lot of oak, but a really big, bright, like sugary hit, just on the verge of like a sugar cookie to caramel, like right in between the two. So the Calumet 14, a little bit more oak actually. It's interesting. Yeah, the Sam Houston's a little bit more sugary on the nose than the Calumet 14. Now the Calumet 15. Yeah, get on the nose side by side. The 15 didn't blow me away as much. It just was more on the palate where it really hit me. So let's go to the palate with the Sam Houston. I'll give some notes on this one and then do a quick comparo. All right, first sip, pretty interesting. I'm going to take a second sip before I give notes, and I'll talk about this question. In the meantime, from Yeah Dude, do you guys drink cocktails, beer, or wine much, or you're pretty much always reaching for neat spirits? I don't do very much beer anymore, occasionally, but pretty rarely these days. Wine, a little bit more than beer these days, usually with a meal. I went out to a nice restaurant for the first time in a year, right? And I did the wine pairing and just reminded me how interesting, different varietals of wine can be and the way that they can kind of compare with mesh with the foods you're eating. So I do enjoy wine. I'm not a wine geek, but I do know what I like with wine. Cocktails, again, it kind of has to be the right time and place for me. During the summertime when it's hot, I like having highballs, which like basically sparkling water and whiskey. Like trying different kinds of whiskey, like trying a twist of lemon versus a twist of orange mixed in with it. A ranch water, which is tequila and soda water or mineral water with lime. Excellent on a hot day. And if I end up at a cocktail bar, I'll almost always start out with some kind of a cocktail. And I'll usually kind of go to the bartenders and say, look, I like bitter spirits like Fernet and things like that. And I like whiskeys and I like tequilas, but I like those flavors. What do you recommend, or can you just make me something? So I usually will almost always, I'll just do like one mixed drink and then I'll usually switch to just straight spirits, because that's mainly what I've learned over time is that if I stick to straight spirits, I feel fine the next day. But if I have sugar and things like that in a cocktail, I feel like crap. All right, Devin. Yes, I should have brought up Thrawn, who's an absolutely amazing character as well. Uh, Great one to bring up there. And they've been teasing him being either in the Mandalorian or in one of the spin-offs, maybe the Ahsoka spin-off. Because, one of those has got to connect back up with Ezra at some point, right? So anyway, I don't want to give too many spoilers if you haven't seen Rebels, but Thrawn is a character from Rebels and a very compelling bad guy. So awesome. Okay, so let me give some proper notes now on the Sam Houston. I had my first sip. Let's see how the second one fares. It's spicier. It drinks a bit above proof. I think it's the same proof as the Calumet. There's the Calumet 14. 49%, 98 proof. So it's a little bit higher. Tastes a lot higher, not as high as the 15. Um, is it better than the Calumet 14? Yes. I still think so. Both on the nose and the palate. Yeah. Across the board, I prefer it to the Calumet 14, the Sam Houston. Let me try now against the Calumet 15, and let me get a little more water here before I do that. Speaking of beer, this is a local distillery here in San Diego, and one of my old school favorite beers, Red Trolley Ale, back when I used to drink beer more regularly. These days, I usually only crack into beer when I'm making beer brats, which is one of my favorite things to make. You boil the bratwurst in beer and like sauerkraut and garlic and onion for like an hour, and then you just throw them on the grill, and it's just incredible. Okay, let's do a proper side by side now between the Sam Houston 14 and the Calumet 15, which I've still got a little bit left of here. Sam Houston first. Yeah, it's got almost like a weird sour hit to the end of it on the palate. I mean, it's flavorful. It's not very oaky, the Sam Houston. It's full bodied and it's got a lot of flavor. Um, Let me now compare it to this bottle right here. Yeah, it's just so much more flavorful. Yeah. Yeah. Between all of these, I definitely prefer this Calumet 15. I think they really kind of hit something with this. I'm really interested to see how the Sam Houston 15s come out, what they end up doing with that. I think some of the channels, I think ADHD Whiskey and I think Mash and Drum got the different versions of the Sam Houston 15 that they're considering. I don't know if they're releasing different batches or if they're just going to pick one and release it. that was interesting to see those guys break it down. I think they had different reactions to it. So be interested to see how that one is when it comes out. But yeah, so far, I mean, if I had to rank these, I would say definitely this Calumet 15 at the top of the list pretty easily. Then I would probably put the Sam Houston 14 after that, and then the Calumet 14 at the last. And again, keep in mind these Sam Houston 14s, they vary a lot from batch to batch. And again, that's anecdotal. I was only able to get my hands on this particular one, and it just, it's. I had seen other reviews of people just absolutely raving about this bottle, and when I tasted it, I didn't get it. So it must just be that this batch, the Missouri batch, is not one of the best. So. Yeah, I'll have to leave it at that. Let me catch back up on some chat here. Saw a bunch of stuff come through. All right, Eric says Boulevardiers are the best cocktails, period. I do love a Boulevardier. I also do love just a Negroni, which is, basically the same thing, except sub in gin. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly that mix of like the bitter and the whiskey that just, I think, works so well too. So I agree on that one. All right, Dev says, Dutch, when are you guys going to do a rye comparison? Well, yeah, we've been planning one. Our members got to see our side-by-side we ended up doing with the Thomas Handy that we reviewed not too long ago. And in the episode, we teased that we were going to compare it to the Old Forester rye, the 100 proof Old Forester rye. And if you are a member and you saw that episode, then you know that we ended up pulling out, I think, 3 other bottles to compare it to, including a Whistle Pig, and then finally the Willet 4-year, and I think we pulled out one more. Maybe it was just those two. But yeah, I think actually doing a rye blind would be pretty interesting, comparing maybe some that are all around the same proof, because when you get to rye, there's such a wide range of prices. And there's some very inexpensive ones that I think are overachievers. And 2 of them I mentioned, Old Forester rye and the Willet 4-year that you can get for, probably around $60. The Old Forester around 25. Pound for pound, it's hard to beat either one of those. I think they're excellent. And yeah, I mean, we do have plans for that. I think we've got Michter's rye as well that we might throw into that mix. So. All right. Are you going to submit Calumet 15 to the Ultimate Spirits competition? After tasting it here, yeah, I think I'm going to push for this one to make it into the competition. We're probably going to be filming some stuff in a couple weeks. So, yeah, we could potentially even get a proper full-blown review of this one out and it still be relevant. So, yeah, I think it's a good one. I think it's worth entering into that competition. I agree. All right, Lando says, was really disappointed when I first got my Sam Houston 14, came back to it recently after giving it some time to open up for a few months and liked it way better. Yeah, I think with both of these, I mean, tasting them here and now after they've been sitting for a while, I think I like both of them a little bit better. The Sam Houston a little bit more than the Calumet, but still, I think even after having these both open up for a while, I think this 15-year Calumet still beats them both. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a richer flavor. Definitely. All right, so Nick P got to see it. The Handy side-by-side was awesome. Yeah. That got a little chaotic, but it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It's always fun just grabbing bottles and comparing things like that. All right, here's a great question from Michael, another one of our members. What's the one single barrel whiskey you wish you could score on the Ultimate Spirits competition? Great question, because as you guys know, or you will learn right now, we don't allow single barrel products into the Ultimate Spirits competition. In part because, our opinion is that there's really no value to the consumer to review in some sort of a competition a single barrel product, because there's really no way you're going to get the same bottle that we got, the same barrel that we got. So, a distillery can only do so much quality control to maintain consistent profiles barrel to barrel. There's just always going to be those differences. So, if I were to pick one single barrel that I think should be in there, I would probably have to go with the Michter's 10-year, just because that's one of my personal go-tos. It's it's probably a little polarizing because it's expensive. It's only 10 years old and it's priced at like 150 bucks usually. I love that flavor profile. Again, I mentioned that earlier in the stream, how that's kind of like the absolute limit for me of oakiness in a product, but consistently one that I've really enjoyed time after time again. So yeah, if I had to pick one, that would be what it is. I think you'd probably get a very different answer from the other guys. So I don't know what they would say. So maybe we'll ask them in a future episode. But good question, like that one. All right, Fez says, I think one of the main things is that we are now trying to get bourbon that's on the same level as the allocated products. The industry has changed a lot. Yeah, definitely. That's always the challenge. Stuff that's allocated, that's hard to get your hands on, like the Wellers and whatever else, Rock Hill Farms. Like the most popular things are for people who want to answer that question of what can I get because I can't find this. And that's a tough thing to get around because they're so limited. People still want to try them. Even if I recommend you something in lieu of Rock Hill Farms, you're still going to want to try Rock Hill Farms. And I don't blame anybody for wanting to try it. It's just, it sucks to have to pay well over MSRP for these products. So, and like I said, I think some of the other big distilleries are going to, in the next few years, maybe start dropping the mic on that. The ones that haven't really done it, that haven't necessarily played the distribution games that Buffalo Trace has played, for instance, Makers and Knob Creek, I think could start releasing some stuff that's well aged and higher proof that really is going to be, like who cares at this point about the allocated stuff? I can go to any store and get a Knob Creek 12-year for a reasonable price, and it's excellent and checks all the boxes of what I like. Or if they do a cask strength in the future. So, all right. So, I am looking over at the walking stick thinking, I've tried all the other ones. Shouldn't I just get one more pour of the walking stick just to round it all out? And I've got just a tiny bit left of my Calumet 15. So I'm going to kill this off, put a little bit of the walking stick in here just for the sake of comparing it to when we did our blind of those. And again, not my finest moment, or was I just being completely honest and saying what I really did like the best was the walking stick? So last sip here of the Calumet 15. Yeah. 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 It's definitely on the oaky side. If you The best thing, I still keep coming back to that Elijah Craig 12-year. If you've had that in the past and you thought that was too oaky, then this is going to probably be too oaky for you. I brought up the Michter's 10-year earlier a couple of times. Same thing I would say with that. If you think that's too oaky, you're probably going to think this is too oaky. If you think that any of the E.H. Taylor stuff reads as too oaky or tannic for your palate, you're probably going to think the same about this. Maybe not. But right up to that edge. So it's on that oakier side for sure, but a very rich, well-rounded flavor. Other than that, definitely enjoying it. So let's see how the walking stick fares. Let me clean this glass out a little bit. So I've been thinking about some other giveaways to do in the future. I'm not going to run one tonight just because I'm not well enough prepared. But keep your eyes out. I think in 2 weeks for sure we're going to do one. I think it's either 2 weeks or 3 weeks out, but probably do some shirts. I'm curious what you guys think about glassware. I was thinking about, in a future episode, maybe doing a giveaway of like, I don't know if tequila glasses are interesting. The other thing we're going to look at is maybe some branded Glencairns to do as giveaways. But we got a lot of things in the pipeline. It just takes us a little while to get to them. So thanks for sticking around, guys, for the final pour of the night. This amazing product called Walking Stick. They've actually updated their branding a little bit. If you see it in the store today, though, I think the label's a little different, but it'll still cost you, I think, like 30 bucks. It's a single barrel, 90 proof, from Barton, sourced. At least that's what the intel says. And it was the one that I picked in the blind between 1792 single barrel, Sam Houston 14, Calumet 14. Yeah, this was my pick. So I'm going to put it up here. Take that 15 year down and put up the reigning champion in my book. And take a quick look at the comments here. All right. Oh, Ross, thank you so much for the super chat. It definitely helps the channel out. I'm out. Great stream. Hope you walk out of there with your liver. Yes, I am walking home. Don't worry. I appreciate the concern of everybody. But yeah, I am. The reason it's easier for me to do these lives is I can walk here. So Devin says, Riedel Spirits glasses. Yeah, I don't know if you saw in the beginning of the stream, I did talk a little bit about these because there was a question about tequila tasting glasses, and these are the ones that we use exclusively. You can see kind of that it says Riedel Tequila. So yeah, I mean they're really nice, and I haven't done side by sides, and I've used plenty of different things for tasting tequila in the past, but these are definitely, you know, they package two of them in here and they do a good job. And I've enjoyed using their products. But for whiskey, obviously the Glencairn I think works excellent. But you know what? When I'm at home just sipping on something, I'm usually just grabbing a rocks glass. Sometimes I'll grab a Glencairn. Depends on what kind of mood I'm in. All right, so let's crack into this walking stick. Oops. Yeah, thanks again, Ross. All right. Ernie says, love some glassware. All right, good to know. Jose says, do a challenge coin or Glen. I second both of those. All right, cool. So maybe we'll work some of that into it. I think we're still working on the whole Glencairns that are maybe branded or something. But if and when we do that, I mean, I'd say more like when we end up doing that, we'll probably do those as giveaways, in addition to the shirts and stuff like that. So, you know, the nose on this thing is pretty darn good. You know, if Jules and Dylan were here, they would be making so much fun of me right now. You know, for 90 proof, there's a lot going on here. There's almost like an apricot sweetness. Not really any oak, but there's a good kind of a fruit melange going on. Decent amount of sweetness. Just for a quick comparison, the Calumet 14. Yeah, you know what? I do prefer the nose ever so slightly of the walking stick. So maybe I'm going to reaffirm my prior decision here. Yep. I don't know what it is. Now, this is an older bottle, and as you can see, it's almost empty. So maybe we were talking about bottles opening up earlier in the stream. Maybe this has just opened up more. I don't know. I don't know. Check the palette here. You know, there's a good evolution on the palette. I think that's one of the reasons I ended up picking it, which is there's initial, almost like an ethanol hit that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a 90 proof. And then a little bit of oak comes through, very, very subtle oak, and then this wash of sweetness, but like a fruity sweetness, not a sugary or a caramelized sugar sweetness. It's more on the fruit spectrum. And again, maybe that's the reason I picked this, is that it just kind of reads on that side of the sweet spectrum more. Get a little bit of water before I take another sip. Yeah, Nick hit the nail on the head. I'm sure wherever they are, they're still making fun of you. Absolutely. They'll probably watch the stream like tomorrow and be like, God, dude, you're such an idiot. All right, Ray needs to sign off. Cheers, man. Thanks for hanging out. We're almost done here, but always fun getting your comments. Thanks for the Star Wars comments and questions as well, because I always enjoy just chatting about that stuff. So thanks again for supporting the channel. All right, Fez says, have a good night. Just wanted to say, picked up a Foursquare 2008, and man, I was impressed. Awesome. Glad you enjoyed it. I just actually, a couple nights ago, cracked back into my 2007, and I do think now, after going back to that one, I do think I have a slight preference for the 2008. And yeah, as you know, that's our second highest scoring spirit ever in our Ultimate Spirits competition. I'm just looking over at our leaderboard over there. So thanks for hanging out tonight, Fez. Appreciate it. All right, let me give another sip here to the walking stick and give you guys some tasting notes as we close out the night here. You know, it's just a bit of a roller coaster of a flavor experience. I mean, there's some proof hit, there's some good sweet hit. Um, at the end of the day, though, it does kind of taste like a really decent $30 to $40 bottle. There's not that richness that I was getting in the Calumet 15. Not nearly as much oak. Let me do a quick side by side now with the other two. First, Calumet 14 against this walking stick. So Calumet 14. There's more oak on this for sure. To me, the overall experience on the palate, I don't get any fruit. The finish is a little quicker on this Calumet 14. So, yeah, strangely enough, I still do prefer the walking stick to the Calumet 14. All right. I'm going to go back into the walking stick and now compare it to the Sam Houston 14. So, refresh my palate here, and I will check the chat real quick. I know we got some people tuning out. It's late for you guys on the East Coast, especially, but appreciate you guys hanging out. Devin Patel says, Dutch, this has been real fun. Hopefully, you do a Star Wars and bourbon night. That'd be a lot of fun. We've actually been talking about potentially doing some stuff on Twitch, or maybe doing some kind of like watch party things where we will do like a movie and give you our commentary. Maybe, I don't know. We're kicking around some ideas like that. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. All right. Sam says, drinking Tears of Llorona because you're all awesome, Sam. Hope you're enjoying it. I'm curious what batch you have. You drop that in the chat. If you look on the label, there's usually a little symbol. There's like a knot, and then under that knot symbol will be another symbol. There's an eagle, and then under that there's a symbol usually. So I think the most recent one is the knot symbol. The first batch didn't have one there, and I think I mistakenly said in our review of it that that was the eagle batch, but I think they all have the eagle. It's the symbol that's underneath that, so let us know what you got. Herschel's in the house. Thank you, Herschel, again, for being a member. What's up to you as well? Yeah, you joined kind of right at the end here, but, you know, sometimes this is the most fun. But you can go back and rewatch the whole thing. Thanks for hanging out, and again, thanks for being a member. Jose, happy Cinco de Mayo and Viva Mexico, cabrones. All right, man. Cheers. Thanks for hanging out. And thanks for sending all your taste tests you do to me on Instagram. Appreciate seeing those. We get a lot of Instagram messages, and I'm really crappy about responding to people, so I apologize to people if I don't respond. There's not enough hours in the day sometimes. Sorry, guys. Ernie, thank you so much for the super chat. Thanks again. Our very first member, Ernie. Thank you for your support of the channel. Happy Cinco to you as well. And thanks for hanging out tonight. Michael Jonas says, Barton Juice is seriously underrated in my opinion. One of my favorite available pours is 1792 Foolproof. I actually completely agree with you on that one. I get that question a lot. I've gotten that question a lot of like, what are you currently drinking? What are you currently liking? And I keep coming back to those 1792 Foolproofs because at least for a while there, they were very easy to find. Various store picks and things like that. And I've just never had one that I thought was bad. They're all, you know, it's 125 proof. You can throw a piece of ice in it if you want. You can drink it straight if that's what you like. It's a great bargain too for what you're getting. So completely agree on that one. Michael, thank you for being a member. Thank you for the kind words, sir. Appreciate it. All right, woohoo Twitch. All right, so yeah, we did register our Twitch channel. We just haven't done anything over there yet. Yeah, we'll see. It's going to take a little work for us to get coordinated enough to do it, but we are kicking that idea around, and we'll try to let everybody know when and where that ends up happening. So, all right, so it has an eagle, and beneath it looks like a little mound. You might have the knot. It might be a knot, like a little tied knot. I think that's the most recent batch. So, hopefully you're enjoying it. All right, so here we go. Last comparison of the night. Got the walking stick and the Sam Houston 14, the Missouri batch, which again, I don't think was the best batch, at least based on the totality of the reviews that I have heard. So let's check the nose here. I don't know why I like this walking stick more. I don't know what it is. Yeah, I like this nose for some reason. And maybe it's the proof. I mean, you'll hear master distillers say sometimes you get the best out of a particular mash bill at a certain proof. And maybe for whatever reason with Barton Juice at 90 proof, it just hits the palate the right way for me. All right, so let's check the palate, which is more important, obviously. Yeah, it's still really. I mean, the drinkability on the walking stick is fantastic, and there's just enough there on the palate that keeps it so interesting for me. I don't know. I do enjoy that. All right, Sam Houston. Mm. A little bit more oak on this. It's a little bit less sweet. Hmm. I mean, given the price difference, still grabbing the walking stick. I'll do it one more time, going the other way, drinking the Sam Houston first, and then the walking stick. But I feel I feel okay in my decision from our blind. All right, Craig says loves Curiosity Public videos. You guys are entertaining and learn so much. Cheers, Craig. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for the kind words. We do enjoy flavors, and we do enjoy talking about it all, and we enjoy tasting new things and sharing it with you guys. So thanks for hanging out tonight. Craig says, do you keep in touch with the butcher? I message with him from time to time. I haven't kept in touch with pretty much anybody over the lockdown days. Jules and Dutch being the exception. Jules and Dutch, wow. I've had one too many bourbons at this point. Jules and Dylan being the exceptions to that. But yeah, I still message with the butcher from time to time. We love talking about music still. But as things open up, gotta hang out with the guy again. I haven't seen him in way too long. Sam says, I think that's it. Okay, so it is the knot. Like no tequila I've had. Thanks, Dutch. Love, curiosity. Cheers, man. Appreciate the kind words. Yeah, Tears of Llorona. I mean, again, it's an expensive bottle, guys, and I don't love pushing people to buy something that's 200 bucks. What I did learn actually is that I think he's doing a limited run of small bottles of 375s. I don't know what the price point is on those, but I did see that he's doing that with whatever the newest batch is. I don't know if it's the not batch or if it's the forthcoming batch. And I do think that's limited. So if you really want to try it, keep an eye out for those smaller bottles because that's a great way to be able to try it and check it out. So all right, here we go. Going the other way now. Sam Houston first, followed by the walking stick. And this is kind of the way I do it when I do blinds. Is I try to do, if it's three, I'll do them in all the different iterations if I can. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty oaky bourbon. I mean, it's not as oaky as the 15 Calumet, but it's pretty oaky. It's got a good amount of sweetness. A little bit drying, just a tiny bit drying. All right, now the walking stick. There's something about the way the flavors are almost stretched out more with the walking stick that kind of allows your palate to really pick them all up. I didn't necessarily think that I was going to come to the same conclusion, guys. That after trying all these again, that I still prefer the walking stick to them all, but I kind of do. Um, Definitely would say that the Calumet 15 is superior versus all of these. I don't necessarily think that any of you would also prefer the walking stick. It's just kind of the way maybe my palate works. And obviously, when Jules and Dylan did this, they had a different take. I think Dylan picked the Sam Houston, and I think Jules picked the 1792 single barrel. But yeah, interesting. A fun exploration here of some Barton juice, a fun tequila tasting as well. I'm knocking glasses over almost over there, but this has been a lot of fun, guys. I know, odd for us to do a Wednesday night. I think mark your calendars 2 weeks. I'm thinking 2 weeks on Friday. Let me double check the date. That's tentative right now. Yeah, the 28th. Keep that in mind as potentially we'll have everybody here for a live stream. Pencil it in at least. And stay tuned. Make sure if you're subscribed, you've got that bell notification icon checked, because then you'll get a notification anytime we post something or anytime we go live and things like that. So appreciate all of you guys that have tuned in tonight. If you haven't already, hit that like button. It does help us out. And otherwise, it's great seeing you all. I will potentially hop in another live next week. I'm going to try to just, even if it's just me like this, try to do these at least every other week, possibly moving up to every week. Might be able to drag Jules in here next week if we can think of a good blind to do, or blind or something, cracking into some new bottles. I will be getting a new bottle that's very special. Probably tomorrow it should be coming. Might save that for the whole crew in 2 weeks. But it is a well-aged Japanese spirit, Japanese whiskey. Could be a fun one. So until then, or until our next video drops, which should be maybe tomorrow, and I think that's going to be a cognac video. So this week we've got rum, tequila, and cognac. So not necessarily for everybody, but some fun content for us to do. We've got, like I said, a big backlog of old videos that we're trying to crank through. And by the way, for our members, if you're still watching, any of our members, a lot of that old content that we're still trying to get through, it's not going to have any bonus footage, unfortunately. So I do apologize for that. But we'll try to at least alternate those every other week, so we're getting some bonus content out to you guys. And we're thinking about doing a exclusive live for members only when we get together to film next time. It might just kind of be a short thing, and you might have to just catch it on the replay because we're not exactly sure when it's going to happen. But keep your eyes out for that. We'll try to give some advance notice if we can, and it might end up being on a Saturday, depending on how our filming schedule works out. But all right, that's all I got to say. Thank you guys. Have a happy Cinco de Mayo. Be safe. Whatever Jules says at the end of the episodes, I can't remember all that stuff. Like, be safe, stay curious. Oh, I say stay curious. Stay curious.